Imagine meeting your great-grandparents at the same age you are now. They might look surprisingly small. Not because they were a different species, they had the same human DNA. But across many countries, people born more recently became taller and, in some populations, physically larger. This strange pattern is called the secular trend in growth, and for much of the 20th century, it was remarkably consistent. In some European countries, average adult height increased by more than 10 centimeters over several generations. But here's the strange part. Your genes did not suddenly change. Evolution usually takes many generations. So what changed? The answer begins with something surprisingly ordinary. Food. Not simply eating more, eating better. For much of human history, childhood nutrition was unpredictable. A bad harvest could mean less food. An infection could steal nutrients. A difficult winter could leave a child smaller than their genetic potential. Growing bodies need enormous amounts of energy. They also need protein, minerals, vitamins, and enough calories to keep development running normally. When those things are missing, growth slows. When they become consistently available, growth can accelerate. And that is exactly what happened in many industrialized countries. Clean water improved. Refrigeration became common. Food became more reliable. Milk, meat, eggs, fruits, vegetables, and other nutrient-rich foods became easier to obtain. But food was only part of the story. Disease mattered enormously. Imagine being a child in a crowded 19th century city. Your body is trying to grow, but repeated infections keep forcing your immune system into action. The energy that could have supported growth is being used elsewhere. This is one reason childhood disease can leave a permanent mark on adult height. Then sanitation improved. Sewage systems expanded. Clean drinking water became more available. Vaccination reduced some dangerous infections. Medical care improved. Suddenly, more children could reach adulthood without their growth being repeatedly interrupted. And something fascinating happened. Children began growing faster. They reached puberty earlier. They became taller adults. Researchers noticed this pattern across generations. The Dutch are one famous example. Average height in the Netherlands increased dramatically during the 19th and 20th centuries. By the late 20th century, Dutch adults were among the tallest populations ever measured. But there is an important catch. Humans are not simply becoming bigger forever. The trend has slowed or even stopped in some wealthy populations. Why? Because there is a biological ceiling. Your genes still set a range for how your body can develop. Environment helps determine where inside that range you end up. Think of genetics as a blueprint. Nutrition, disease, sleep, and living conditions influence how much of that blueprint can actually be built. So when living conditions improve, populations can move closer to their biological potential. But there is another reason modern generations may appear larger. Height is only one measurement. Body mass is different. Modern societies have also experienced enormous changes in diet and physical activity. Highly processed foods became easier to obtain. Portion sizes increased. Daily physical activity often decreased. That means some populations became heavier without necessarily becoming proportionally taller. So bigger can mean two very different things: taller or heavier. And those are not the same biological story. There is another strange clue. Look at old photographs. People from a century ago can sometimes appear dramatically smaller than people today. Part of that difference is real. Part is also perception. Clothing changed. Photography changed. Nutrition changed. And populations themselves changed. But researchers can measure bones. They can measure skeletons. They can compare historical records. And the pattern becomes much clearer. Generations exposed to better childhood conditions generally grew larger. This tells us something profound about the human body. Growth is not controlled by genes alone. It is a conversation between genes and the environment. Your DNA provides instructions. Your environment determines how easily those instructions can be followed. And that conversation begins before birth. A mother's nutrition and health can influence fetal growth. Then childhood conditions continue the process. Every meal, every infection, every year of development, all of them leave tiny effects. Eventually, those effects become a body. So when you see that younger generations are taller than older ones, you are not simply looking at evolution. You are looking at history written into human biology. Better sanitation, better nutrition, better healthcare, less childhood disease, more stable living conditions, millions of small improvements, stacked across generations. And there is something almost eerie about that. A city builds a sewage system, a refrigerator enters a home, a vaccination prevents an infection, a child eats enough protein. None of those events looks like evolution, yet together, they can change the physical appearance of an entire population. So why did humans get bigger? Not because nature suddenly decided to redesign us. In many cases, humans simply became better at giving growing bodies what they needed. And perhaps that is the strangest part. The human body did not change first. The world around it changed, and the body followed. So the next time you see a generation that looks taller than the one before it, remember what you are actually seeing. You are seeing nutrition. You are seeing medicine. You are seeing sanitation. You are seeing childhood conditions. You are seeing history, written not in books, but in bones. Your height carries traces of the world you grew up in. Your body is partly a record of your environment. That means a ruler can measure more than height. It can measure a little bit of history. The next time you compare yourself with an older generation, look beyond the number. Ask what changed around them, because bodies remember. Sometimes, they remember an entire century. And that may be the real reason newer generations seem so different. We didn't simply inherit a different body. We inherited a different world. And our bodies quietly recorded the difference. So when you look at a taller generation, you're not just seeing bigger humans. You're seeing what happens when the world gives the human body a better chance to become what it was capable of becoming.